This year, I'm going to JapFest. And I am fortunate enough to actually own a 90s Japanese sports car, which you'll all know is the Mitsubishi Gto. So I was thinking about it and I thought, if I'm going to JapFest, it only makes sense to turn up to JapFest in a Japanese car. And I had every intention of entering this Mitsubishi Gto as a show car down at JapFest. But unfortunately, I had that idea a little too late and I already missed the application process. And even though I'm not taking it to be a show car, it still makes sense to take the Gto, but as you can see, there's a bit of an issue. And today is the 15th of March, meaning I've got less than a month to get this Gto finished, because JapFest is on the 13th of April, and I've got to get down there on the 12th. I've also got to get it aligned, MOT'd, and finished well before then. And although it looks like there's everything in the engine bay, and yes, it kind of is, those of you who've seen the last video on the Gto in the top right-hand corner now, you'll know there's still a fair few issues with this car. And usually when there's problems, that means you need parts, and I need parts for the Gto, but you can't really get most of them new or even on eBay. Because with the age of it and the rarity of it within the UK, it's actually quite difficult to get all the stuff for. But there is one place I've found, which is my saving grace, because this will help me finish this Gto.
And after travelling the 2.5 hours from Liverpool to Scunthorpe, I ended up here, JapAttack, the one place I needed to be to get all of the Gto parts.
And out here is the car graveyard, also known as the parts yard. They have a fair few things. You've got the FTO, you've got a few MR2s and stuff. They've also got a lot of Mitsubishi bonnets, the side skirts, the rear bumpers for both Mark 1 and Mark 2. If you come around this side, down here is what saved me today, because they've got 4 GTOs, all in for braking. One right down the bottom. That one's got most of the stuff on it. Gives you a quick walk around, but even the insides of them all, they're all full to the brim. The parts. Oh, that's not even a GTO. And this one, as you can see, there's just stuff for days. They've got seals, headlights, bonnets, pop-ups. Some people are taking panel cuts, which I should have done, but I plated mine, even on the side. And they've even got the gas sunroof on the top. So if you need any of your GTO parts, go down in the description and click that link for JapAttack's eBay link, because they've got a lot on there. But then if you can't find it on there, give them a shout and you might be able to come down, have a look at what they've got and see if they have anything you need to get your GTO back on the road, just like mine. So in the back of the wagon, we've got a lot of wood for the unit to get that room built. Got the plywood for the roof and the floor, and the GTO goodies. We need to get back down the unit, so I'll see you when we're back down there. Now we're back down the unit. We need to get all this out the van, so we need to get the wood and the GTO parts out, so we can finish that room in the corner and that car in the corner. So let's unload this van. There it is. The whole van's empty and everything's back in the unit. So the wood's out for the framework for the cozy corner, along with this wood to go on the roof for the lights. And we've also put some wood down on the bottom to create a floor for a base, because I did say when I first got this unit, if you haven't seen it, go click in the top right hand corner now, that this is going to be a room where instead of being out here in the cold with all the cars and stuff, we can go in there and chill. And if you want to see me build that room and see what happens with that and how I actually get it together, click the subscribe button down below to keep up to date with the unit updates and everything to do with the car. But the main thing for today was the GTO part. So we've got a red bonnet, so when I open the bonnet, it's not blue underneath. And the good thing with this one is it's actually much better than the one I've got, because the one I've got has had so many layers of paint. There's big divots in where it's been sanded in the past, and all the paint that's on it just isn't great. But along with the bonnet, like you've just seen in the back of the van, I got a few more goodies. So I managed to get a set of Mark 1 wings, both in black, as you can quite clearly see, because on my wing, again, like the bonnet and everything else, it's had such a horrendous paint job. You can see the paint's all flaky, it's all bubbly, it doesn't look great. And on the driver's side wing, it was quite badly damaged, so there's a big dent and there's a hole there, and it's just, I didn't really want to tackle trying to fix that, because I didn't want to have a load of filler on the wing, especially under the wrap, because it's another opportunity for it to rust. When the filler shrinks and flakes off, it'll bubble through and it just won't look great. So my best option for the long term is to get some new wings, and I'm quite happy with them. So the next thing was this proportional valve. So this came off a Mitsubishi FTO, but what it does is, instead of going through your ABS pump, under the bonnet over there, it just goes straight through this and straight to your rear corner. So it does it in diagonals. So if you brake, your car doesn't want to spin out, because if it does, say it does both the rears, the car will want to skid because both rear wheels have locked up. Whereas if it does diagonals, it'll keep it in a straight line and prevent you from spinning out. But those of you who subscribed and have kept up with the channel, you'll know that in one of my last videos, I tried to fix the GTO and my ABS pump burst. So I thought, instead of trying to fix that pump, because it's quite a common fault for that to go, the better option was to just buy this and delete it altogether. Because realistically, the ABS pump is 32 years old, so it probably won't work that well anyway. The next thing was all of these clips. The reason I decided to go to JapFest and get them off the car myself is because I've only found one place that sells those clips and grommets. And it was a website called Amaya, and they do like all the stock parts for the GTOs and many other cars, but because they're all stock in, I think, the new parts, an individual clip for that was £1.90, and I needed 84 for both sides of the door card, and that's not including the grommets or the screws. So I went down there and I got these, and I got basically everything I need for mine, because the way it works is on the side you can see all the holes down the door. The grommets go in there like them. So actually, yeah, so they're them. So they're the grommets that go in, and then on the side skirts, if I can find them, there they are up here. So on the side skirts, the black ones sit in there, they slide across, and then because they are pins, so there's got some of the old grommets in, because they're on pins, they push in, and that's how they stay against the door. And not only are they pinned in, but they're also bolted in with a nut and like a T-bolt on one side, and that's what keeps them fixed at the back end of the door. And last but not least was a stock airbox. So the reason why I got this one, as opposed to getting a pod filter and sticking it on the MAF sensor, because that kind of makes a bit more sense, was because with this filter box I can get a panel filter, like a K&N equivalent or something along those lines. And because I've built the engine up back to stock, so I haven't done any upgrades in terms of power or anything else, it doesn't need a pod filter, so I can stick the stock filter box back on, and I can get a filter that fits, even if it's an upgraded version. So that's a little intro into everything I've got today, where I've got it from and how I've got it. So the only thing left to do now is to get it all fitted. That part sit was actually a couple of weeks ago, but now I've actually got the time to fit the stuff to the GTO. And the first thing you need to do is, one, get the GTO from over there to behind me in the bay, and two, the first thing I'm actually going to do on the car is the ABS delete, because I think that's going to take the longest, and that's the most important because I need brakes. So it's been a couple of weeks, but let's see if the GTO starts and I can drive it into this bay. If not, I need to start pushing. There it is, it's in the bay, ready to be worked on. So like I was saying before, the first thing we need to fix, or I need to fix, is down here. This is the ABS pump. That is getting deleted out. This is going to be a long process, so I'm just going to crack on with it, and I'll voice over it as much as I can to try and tell you what it is I'm doing, but truth be told, I'm kind of winging it.
So to make things easier for myself and so you can actually see what it is I'm doing, I'm going to take the bonnet off the GTO. And although I made that look easy, this bonnet weighs a ton. So now the bonnet's off, the next thing I need to do is remove all the boost intake pipes along with the coolant pipes, because I've got a bit of a coolant leak, and while everything's off it makes sense to fix it now instead of putting it all back together and then taking it all off again.
So looking at this now, to get it off, I think what I need to do is disconnect all of these electrical connectors there, because you can see down the back end of that silver there's the 2 bolts I need to get to. Bit crap to see on camera, but them 3 need to come off. I'm probably going to have to take the injector plugs off because the loom wraps around just in front of it. That's the same for the sensors on the top of the planning, which do with the rear injectors and a few other bits, and the throttle position sensor and the cam angle sensor, that needs to come out. I might even move these out the way. They only plug in there, that's not that hard. Then it'll be a case of taking the shift cable bracket off just to give me a bit more space underneath, along with the vacuum line bracket there. That might need to come off, unfortunately. Then the fuel rail, then the fuel supply line, I think that'll need to come off as well. I tell you what, it's just getting worse every time I look at it now. Then there's the turbo coolant lines, that's what these are. That top one there and the little one at the back underneath, that one there. Then this is a heater matrix hose which goes straight to there on the firewall, so they'll need to come off. And with it being the central location for the cooling system, I think it's probably where the most things come out of, and unfortunately I've got to take it off, so it's a case of cracking on, because all that needs to come off, then I need to seal it, then I need to get it back on, then I need to make sure it isn't leaking, and hopefully it holds coolant. But I'm going to struggle with this, and I'll come back to you when everything's disconnected. So now we're at a point where everything's off, and I think the thermostat housing is actually ready to come off, because like you can see here, this is the perfect example. I took all the coil packs and stuff off. The lead comes out and goes into the top of the head. There's a bolt there, a bolt underneath. That then runs off to the front turbo coolant lines, and then that is the return. And it's the same on the backside for the rear turbo. And down the bottom, you've got your heater matrix ones. They go off to the heater matrix and back. And then here you've got your throttle body coolant line, so then the coolant line runs up through the throttle body and back down. There's two on this side. Now from here underneath, the pipe is just behind at the back, so we should be able to pull this off. Coolant will go everywhere, but I can get to the pipe, get to the O-ring, reseal it, and hopefully not have any coolant leaks when it's all back together. There it is, it's all off. There's coolant everywhere, like I said, but the good thing is you can see what it is I was actually trying to get to. So this is the crossover pipe. Mine's a bit crusty. Yeah, it's not great really, but the seal on the top, I don't know if you can see, I'll try and get parallel to it. The seal on the top actually doesn't sit much above the head. So that seal probably hasn't been doing anything really, and the coolant's just been dripping out the bottom, dripping down here. And that's what's been causing the coolant leak initially anyway. Because the other thing as well is the thermostat housing to the heads have two gaskets. Now I've took that off, I'm going to have to replace the gaskets because I've disturbed them. And I hate doing any job that requires re-gaskets or re-sealers, because chances are when you get it together it probably won't seal. He says after rebuilding the full engine, I know, but that's part of the reason why. Luckily enough the engine itself doesn't seem to leak, but the coolant lines do. And this is the thermostat housing, and you can kind of see on the bottom there where the coolant's been dripping out because it's got a big puddle on it. But these seem to be fairly clean, so I think the culprit was that. Got two seals, so I'll get that in. And while I'm here, I'll actually take that bolt out and that bolt, pull the pipe out, and I'll put a new O-ring on the opposite side where the water pump is. You can just make it out down the back, because if I'm in here doing this once, I don't want to be in a position where I've got to do it again to do the other side, because then I'll have to do them both regardless, so I might as well do them both now. So that's the water tube out. You can see the inside of the engine is full of coolant, so I'm going to have to dry that out somehow, but this is the reason why I had to take this off. So it sits in that way. That seal there is one that came with the engine rebuild kit when I changed the water pump, so I know that's definitely right. You can see the height is a little bit bigger than the collar on the pipe, but this side isn't. This side's one I stuck in that I had thinking it might be enough to seal, but quite clearly not, because with the pipe going in this way, you can see on the bottom there's evidential marks of where the leak was. You can see a little rusty drip. So when it was in like that, the coolant was dripping down onto the gearbox, down from there, and as it pressurised, it was pushing it out a lot faster. And that was what was causing me coolant leak. So what I've done is I've visited JapFest's eBay site again, because I didn't know he sold these, and I've bought two perfectly sized water tube seals, so I can replace both that side, and they're exactly the right size. The manufacturer recommends for that pipe, and if you do it properly, that means no more leaks.
So the first thing to do is to remove the old O-rings, because they didn't really work. Now I'm going to grease up the new O-rings before I put them on, just so they go on a bit easier and there's less of a chance of them getting ripped. Now I can fit them onto the water crossover tube and reinstall the water crossover tube back onto the engine.
So that's the water tube back in, as you've just seen there, and now I need to get the thermostat housing back in. But before I do that, there is another big job we need to do within the engine bay, and that is the ABS delete. So through looking at this logically, to make my life a lot easier, your proportional valve for the brakes is right at the back. You see that thing right there? That's for the brake lines. And while I've got the thermostat housing off, I've actually got a fair bit of good access to get to that prop valve. But if I stick it back on, all this space will be full again, and I can't get down the back to that. So I think the next thing I want to do is take the reservoir lid off, drain the reservoir, go down the back, disconnect that prop valve and take off all the brake lines. and as you can see where they follow it round, I need to then go through and decipher what lines are what. They are labelled, luckily enough, on the ABS pump, but all of this will be coming out. I'll have one line going to there for this front corner, and the rest will be going straight to the back over there, so all this will be gone. I'm thinking if I do it cleverly, I can actually reuse some of the old lines and cut them shorter, because they don't need to be that long anymore. If not, I've got new lines, so I can make up some new brake lines. But anyway, that's going to be the next job, because that's going to be a pain, and while I've got the access, it just makes sense. And for those of you who don't know what a prop valve is, that is this. This is actually off a Mitsubishi FTO, but the GTO did come with a non-ABS version, which kind of had a similar thing to this, but all this does is, as you can see in the middle, there's a line. That is two separate valves. One will be the rear right, one will be the front left. That'll be the rear left, and that'll be the front right. And these two will be your main incoming from the brake booster over there, which on this are on the front. So the fluid pressure comes in from here through the front. The pump then distributes it through those lines to whatever corner needs it most, based on the speed the wheels are rotating. And that is basically a crash course into an ABS. This gets rid of it, this fixes me leak, and this gives me brakes, because that definitely doesn't work. So I'm going to now drain that reservoir and crack on tackling these brakes. So that's the ABS pump off, and it absolutely killed me to cut the brake lines that I'd made up to make it all nice and fancy so I could keep it, but if it doesn't work, it's pointless. But now that the ABS pump's off, and you might have seen within the time lapse that I've actually labelled the hoses, so I know where left is, front left, front right, rear right, and then the two incoming lines, the power lines, I'll have to trace back from the brake booster, because I'm not sure what ones go where, but I'm sure I'll figure it out. But now the pump's off, the next thing for me to do is to try and get to that prop valve down the back. And as you can see, access to recording it isn't actually that easy. But all I'm going to do is, if I let the camera focus, is on the prop valve, you've got one on the top, one on the bottom, one on the top, one on the bottom on the other side, and then a big bolt in the middle. I just need to take them hoses off, take that bolt out, pull that out. And then from there, I think the only lines I can keep are the top left and right, because they're for the rear of the car. So they come under the car up, then to the top of that prop valve, and they stay where they are, luckily enough. But I'm going to get that out and come back to you when I have, because it's not an easy job to record because of access. So yeah, see you in a bit. And I'm back. Finally got the prop valve out. Like I said, it wasn't an easy job, but I've just had a realisation. So there's the original prop valve, the one covered in brake fluid, and I've realised this prop is only for the rear brakes. So one comes from the ABS and one goes to the rear brakes, the other way around. So in theory, instead of putting this one in, which is the fronts and the rears, I could have just left that one in, which only does the rears, and then up here where the ABS pump is, I could have fitted that prop valve where the ABS pump was and just had all the lines running to where they're supposed to on that prop. But I like to do things as proper as I can, so I don't mind sticking it on a firewall and doing that bit of extra work just to make it look nice as well. But the only reason I'm telling you is if you're in a pinch, I might be wrong, so I don't recommend you do it at home, but if it is right, you could take the ABS off, stick that in its place, and technically your brakes then have an ABS delete without having to go through all the faff of taking everything off and bashing your knuckles trying to get to that prop valve. But anyway, that's enough of the if, buts and maybes. One thing I do know for fact is down there where the prop valve was, I now need to get the new one in and then figure out how I'm going to route these brake lines around, because one of these lines already goes to that side under all this mess, so I'm reluctant to try and pull that out. So I'm going to try and find where this goes to and splice into it down there so I can just put it straight into the prop valve. The two on the top, like I said, there for the rears, they can stay as they are, that is fine. Then the other two here, I need to find out which go where is the supply lines to the ABS, which will then go into the front of the prop valve, and they come from here. So on the brake booster you've got the front, and down there you've got one on the side. That's those two. So I need to figure that out as well. And then I also need to make a new line for the front right, because that just came straight from the ABS pump and now it's got to go all the way back to the firewall.
So now I'm just removing the two redundant brake lines because I've got rid of the ABS pump, and I'm going to trace through the power lines going to the ABS pump down the back of the firewall to see where they go to, so I know where to cut into them.
So, as you can see, like you've just seen down there, that is the new prop on. I say new, it's brand new second hand, but it's been wire brushed and painted. So that is the rear right. That is the front left on the bottom. That is the rear left. So that will be the front right, which is the one I need to make up. Then these two will be from the master cylinder. So I think that one is the front of the master cylinder, and that one is the side of the master cylinder. So now I've got a bit more investigation work to do, because from the brake lines I took off the ABS pump down here, these two both come from the master cylinder, and I need to figure out which one's from the side and which one's from the front. So I haven't quite figured out how I'm going to do that yet, but these go all the way down, right down through the bottom. See them running over the top, and then they go down to there. So I'm going to cut them there, splice into them with new nuts. Then I can bring them round and into the front of the prop. I just need to know what's what, so I know where to put it. And then I can make the whole new line for this one that goes in here, because that was the front right, but you can see it's a bit short. So, see you in 2. It's now 2 hours later, and I've finally got the brake booster pipes in on the prop valve. And it took me a whole 2 hours, but that's the setup so far. I think it's looking okay. The only thing left is the front right one to go in that corner there. Got to bring it round and then into this hole. And I think for this, I'm actually going to just make up a whole new line instead of recycling what I've got, because I've got the stuff to do it, so I might as well do it.
So when you're making up new brake lines, the brake line tends to come in a reel of copper pipe like this. So you've got to straighten it out, cut it to a rough length of what it is I'm going to need. Then I'm going to need to flare the ends out with a nut to make sure that when the brake line actually bolts up to the prop valve, this flared end properly seats to the inside and seals the line. And that's what a good flare looks like. Now I've made the end off and put a nut on, the next thing I want to do is put some industrial heat shrink with glue on the inside around the brake line. So the glue on the inside of the heat shrink, as you heat it up and it shrinks, the glue then sticks to the brake line and helps to seal it from letting any water get in or anything else. And not only does this heat shrink offer mechanical protection from anything knocking into it, but I think it looks quite nice. Now the last thing I need to do is to get the pipe in, and to do that I need to bend it around everything it needs to avoid, to get it as close to the prop valve as I can, so I can screw that one side in, keep bending the pipe around to get it to all the contours and as close to the brake line mounting points as I can. Then after that I can get it into the front wheel arch where it needs to go, and once it's in the wheel arch I can flare the other end off with a nut, and then I can bolt that to the flex pipe that then goes to the caliper, and that's the brake line installed.
And this is it. That was the last little thing I needed to do. You can see the line coming in there just nicely into the actual brakes. Then it comes up all the way through, right down the back, and then to the prop valve. And based on the piping setup, I think everything's right. Just need to bleed the brakes and make sure it doesn't leak, but I think I'll be okay. Now that the ABS delete is done and we don't need the access anymore, I can put the thermostat housing and all the cooling stuff back together, and then when that's done, hopefully that doesn't leak either. Because as you can see, there's a big hole waiting for a load of parts. So because all of that is kind of just the board and stuff, for plugging stuff back in and bolting it together basically, I'm going to crack on with that. My phone's about to die, so I need to put that in charge, but I'll come back to you when we're filling it with coolant, we're bleeding the brakes, and we're testing for any leaks. So, 3, 2, 1. And boom, everything's back on the engine in terms of the thermostat housing, the pipes, the cables, all the HT leads, all that. The only thing missing still is the boost pipes, as you can see, because there's a big hole. But there's a reason I've left them off for now, because I need to bleed the brakes, and if I put the boost pipes on, I won't be able to see that prop valve to see if it's leaking. I hate when you've got to mess with brake fluid on a car. Because it was going well until I realised when I was under the car, I heard dripping and there was brake fluid all over the floor. Must have dumped about 50 quid's worth of brake fluid trying to bleed the brakes up on this stupid GTO. Because no matter what I try, I just cannot get a good seal on that reservoir to pressure bleed it. So I'm going to have to do it the old fashioned way and have someone in the driver's seat bumping the brake while I bleed it from the caliper. So, gonna get someone in, gonna get the pedal pressed, I'm gonna bleed the brakes, and I'll come back to you when they're done, because this is doing my head in. And not only that, but brake fluid is highly corrosive, so everything that's down there where it's stripped on, I'm gonna have to try and clean. But anyway, I'll see you in a bit. So, brakes are done, the reservoir is full, and we seem to have good pedal pressure. Next thing is to fill the coolant so we can make sure that thermostat housing isn't leaking before we get everything back on and try to start the engine. And the reason I say try is because if you watched that video when we very first got the engine in the GTO, you'll have seen that to get the engine to start, I had to give a constant 12 volt supply to the fuel pump in the back, because the ECU and the relays didn't actually send the voltage to the pump to tell it to turn on when you were turning the key to try and start the engine. And I've got a sneaky suspicion that it's down to the ECU. Because when you turn the key to start in the GTO, that ECU is then what decides to send the voltage to the fuel pump to tell it to turn on, to tell it to then try and start the engine. And I think my ECU is faulty. But the good thing is, I scoured the internet and found another second-hand ECU with the same part number. And hopefully this works, because I haven't tested it yet, but it was advertised as fully working. So now I need to just unplug the old ECU with these yellow connectors. So that's the old one out, the new one in, and hopefully that makes a difference. So now the next thing before I actually try and start the car is, you need to get all those boost pipes back on and the battery back in, because you're not going to start the car without the battery. So I get all that done now. So all the boost pipes are back in. I haven't put the battery in yet. I've also put the screen wash filler neck and the battery tray in, because that's where the battery needs to sit. But now that all the boost pipes are in, the MAF sensor is the next thing to go in. And as you'll have seen in the start of the video, I've also got a stock air box. And I've managed to get myself, in that blueprint box there, a stock air filter to go in the stock air box. And this is the stock air box, so I'm pretty sure it just sits on that stud there, that bolt hole, that bolt hole. And this little snorkel goes down there under the fuse box, so it just slots in like that. I say just slots in, obviously it's not as easy, but I need to get that in, sit it there, and have the MAF sensor between that and the intake. So this is it. This is the most together this engine has ever been since I've owned this car. And now that's got an air filter, the MAF sensor's all plugged back in, the battery's in, all the boost pipes are back in. It's got deionized water in it as coolant for now, and the brakes have been bled and pressurized. I think it's only right we try and start it. And hopefully this new second-hand ECU will actually let me start it without having to put power directly to the fuel pump. Fingers crossed. So this is it. The only thing left to do now is hope it actually starts on the key. 3, 2, 1. No. Well, it didn't start, and I've just went into the car. This is the second-hand, brand new second-hand. Don't know if you can see it. The ECU is smoking. It was quite bad when it was in the car, and it still is there. And it absolutely stinks. So that's I think I'll open this up and see what's going on, but this is getting sent back. So I've opened it up, and going through the ECU, it's one of them. I don't even know what that is, but as you can see, it's pretty burnt. Done a number on the board behind it. I haven't got a clue what has caused that. Next to R55. So I've done a bit of digging, and I think those black boards are internal current controllers, meaning it's had too many amps go through it, and that's what's caused it to pop or burn. I've now started to try and dig a bit further in, and this is the fuse board. Split it down, it's all in layers, but there's a fair bit of corrosion on the bottom side of most of these layers, which kind of makes sense, because when I got this GTO, the top corner of the windscreen here, it had peeled away. There was a fair bit of rust, and all the water had gone down the A-pillar and then into that fuse box, so that's probably done the fuse box in as well. And I did split this once upon a time to clean it, but I mustn't have done a good enough job, because I feel like there's still a fair few contacts that have got a fair bit of corrosion still on them, so they need another good scrub. So I've now rebuilt that fuse board, and there's been a development because there was something else that I found that could have been the fault. Because under the dash where the fuse board was, there's these two connectors. Don't know if you can make them out. Sorry, there's 3 there. So there's that one, the little one, and then there's a bigger one as well. But anyway, those dash connectors had a fair bit of green copper corrosion on them, means the copper's oxidized because it's got water in it, which is probably also from when the leak was in that top of the windscreen. So I cleaned them off, scratched them pins out, rebuilt the fuse board, got that back in. All that seems to be okay and plugged in now. So the only thing I really need to do now is put fuel in it, because I know for a fact it has run out of fuel because it's empty. So I've just ran down to the nearest Shell and got 10 litres of V-Power, so I'm going to throw that back in the car. I've also come to the front and I've took that jumper off so I can put the proper relay in, that silver one there, or grey should I say. And then there is no 12 volt going to the fuel pump test lead either, so all of this is how it should be if you were to start the car from the key from the factory. And I'm hoping finding those corroded connectors will actually make a difference, because those connectors come from the dash, and I think they also interlink with the key switch, what's it called? The ignition barrel, because that also affects the fuel system. But anyway, I'm rambling. Let's fill the GTO up, turn the key, and see if it starts on its own without the jumpers. So that's 10 litres of fuel. Let's see what it equates to on the dash. So get the key in. And the needle's barely even moved. I'm pretty sure on these GTOs it's actually a 90 litre tank, which I don't think 10 litres is going to touch the side on the fuel gauge. But the important thing is, now the fuel's in, let's see if it'll actually start after everything I've done today. And just to reiterate as proof, the jumper is there. So the starter, the fuel pump relay is in. There's no 12 volt going to anything in terms of the fuel pump. So if this starts now, that means what I did to the fuse box in terms of stripping it down, cleaning off all the corrosion, and the same with the dashboard connectors has actually made a difference. But after everything else I've tried, I'm not hopeful to, well, I'm hopeful, but I'm not confident. So whether I'm confident or not is irrelevant, because it's all down to what happens when I turn the key. So for the last time, let's see if this works or not, because if not, I've got a lot more research to do and a lot more digging. So, keys in the ignition. 3, 2, 1. Yes! First time. That's with the first turn of the key, and she's ticking over fantastically. As you can see out the back, spat out a lot of condensation, but there's next to no smoke, and it sounds fantastic. Yes! I didn't think that would work, because I've tried everything else, and I think all it come down to in the end was a corroded connector and a dodgy fuse box. But I've done that, changed all the fuses in the fuse box. I know it wasn't the fuses before, someone says it was that, but there you go. If your connectors are green, it's not going to work. But that's the GTO running off the key for the first time since I've owned it in the past, what, 3 years, no, 2021, the past 4 years I've been trying to fix that fault, and I've finally done it. And let's see what it does when we rev it. I'm so happy. Yes! But anyway, let's turn it off, because you probably won't be able to hear me. But like I said, I've had this car since 2021, and that has never started on the key. Well, it didn't even really start when I first got the car. But once again, that is a huge milestone in the restoration of this GTO, because now it turns on the key. I haven't got to mess around with any jumpers or anything like that. And mechanically, there's only one thing left that I can think of doing, which I'm going to do in a future video, and that's put the cars on coilovers. I've got the coilovers and I'm ready to do it. I just haven't done it yet, because I needed to make sure everything worked mechanically in terms of starting it first. And now that I know mechanically everything turns on in the engine, it starts when I want it to, it turns off when I want it to, and it runs how I want it to. That means the road to JapFest and the preparations to take it there are actually looking quite positive, which is good. So now realistically, once I've fitted the coilovers, the only thing I need to do after that is get the bumpers on, do all the aesthetic stuff, fit the interior, which shouldn't be too hard, hopefully. And then I've got to take a stab at wrapping it, because the paint, it's blue, it's black, it's red, the paint's not great. I've got the wrap. And you never know, you might as well give it a go, and that's the only way you can learn, and that's the only way I'll know if I can wrap a car or not. And the other thing is wheels. I do have these Rotor P45s on, but I have gone and bought another set of alloys for the GTO that I think will look a lot nicer on it, and they're already the colour I actually want to spray them. So I haven't got to go through all the faff of painting the wheels, but that's going to be it for this video, guys. I'm so glad in the end I finally got the result I wanted, and I was able to give it to you at home as well, because that has been irritating me for months. And it's just got me that little bit more excited to actually start driving this car for the first time in 15 years. Because the last MOT the GTO had was 2010, and I've never actually driven the car. And it'll also be a testament to me and my skills or how well I've actually put this back together. But once again, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you were just as overjoyed as I was when this started up for the first time. But if you like what you've seen, remember to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notifications bell so you get an update every time I post a video, and I'll see you in the next one.